Well, US President Donald Trump is getting input from world leaders on his proposed meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. He shared his phone call, or details about the phone call with the Chinese president a short time ago, sending out a tweet saying Chinese President Xi Jinping and I spoke at length about the meeting with Kim Jong-un of North Korea. President Xi told me he appreciates that the US is working to solve the problem diplomatically rather than going with the ominous alternative. China continues to be helpful. Well, Mr. Trump says that a deal with North Korea is very much in the making. We are covering this story from every angle. Our Boris Sanchez joins us from the White House, and our Ivan Watson is in Seoul, South Korea. And I will start first with Ivan. Amid all this criticism that the U.S. has agreed to a meeting with nothing in return, President Trump clearly reaching out to other world leaders, looking perhaps to get their support from them. We obviously saw that tweet from China. Just give us a sense of the reaction in the region.
I guess the most important reaction would be the North Korean reaction, which we haven't really heard an official reaction from Pyongyang yet. All of the messages were being ferried by a South Korean delegation that traveled to the White House and that ultimately made the public announcement that President Trump had agreed to meet the North Korean leader face-to-face by May. We still don't know where that could take place or when exactly that could take place. In fact, today, North Korean state media published an article denouncing recent U.S. sanctions that were imposed on North Korea, saying that they could lead the region to war. But it's possible that the North Korean State Propaganda Department just hasn't caught up with the fast pace of news yet. The South Koreans are delighted. They've made it clear that they want to engage in diplomacy with North Korea. And in fact, South Korea's President Moon Jae-in is planning to hold his own face-to-face meeting with the North Korean leader on the demilitarized zone sometime in April. The Chinese have always been pushing for dialogue between North Korea and Washington. And the Japanese, who saw North Korea fire a ballistic missile over their territory last year, they've made it clear that they still want the economic sanctions to remain in place. All of these countries, including the U.S., agree on one very important catchphrase for the region, and that's called denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. They don't want North Korea to have nuclear weapons, and that will be the biggest question if and when the North Korean leader and the U.S. president sit down face to face.
And I want to go to Boris for a little bit more on how this will all kind of happen if this meeting does happen by May. What will President Trump be willing to give up for peace?
That is a very good question, Lynda. It's still unclear that this meeting is even going to take place because we've heard sort of two conflicting things from the administration at this point. You had Sarah Sanders, the press secretary, here at the White House saying just a few days ago that North Korea would have to prove that it's serious about sitting down with the United States, that they would have to provide some kind of verifiable information that they were in the process of denuclearization, or at least that they were committed to it. Then you had President Trump, as you noted, tweeting about his conversations with world leaders, making it sound as if this is a done deal. The United States will sit down with North Korea for direct talks between Kim Jong-un and President Trump, something truly historic and remarkable. It comes down to a question of perception, really. On one hand, you have the president and several figures within his administration firm in the idea that what has led Kim Jong-un to the table are increased sanctions, this pressure that's been put on them, not just by the United States, but also by the United Nations. President Trump, if you speak to people close to him, believes that he can sway Kim Jong-un in a direction that is more favorable for the United States. On the other end, you have the North Korean perception, which is that their rapid development of a nuclear weapon that they can put on a ballistic missile has led the United States and pressured the United States into sitting down at the table with them. Ultimately, what you hear across the board from people not only here in the White House but in Congress as well is that this is a welcome change to the era of strategic patience that we saw with previous administrations. They believe that some sort of radical shift in the approach to North Korea could lead to a positive outcome, but ultimately how those negotiations go, still too soon to tell, Lynda.
All right, Boris Sanchez for us in Washington, Ivan Watson in Seoul. Thank you both very much.